Trump's tariffs aren't protecting American jobs. They're a desperate power grab born from weakness. If you believe the US can bully Canada into submission and force it to become the 50 honest state, prepare to have your mind blown by Canada's unapologetic, bold counterattack. For decades, the US and Canada enjoyed a mutually beneficial, almost unbreakable trade bond. But now, amid Trump's shameless tariff threats, which he claims are designed to stop illegal immigration and drug trafficking, Canada has flipped the script. Prime Minister Trudeau, calling Trump's move a dumb trade war, has unleashed 25% retaliatory tariffs on $155 billion worth of US goods. In this video, we dive deep into how Canada is not only standing its ground, but is ready to turn America's protectionist rants into a wake-up call for the entire world. Is Trump's economic bullying finally catching up with him? To understand why these changes matter, we first need to break down the economic relationship between the US and Canada. These two nations share one of the world's most integrated trade relationships. Products that cross the border for assembly might make up to 8 crossings before they are fully manufactured. The automotive industry, for example, relies heavily on this back and forth exchange, with Canada supplying 89% of US auto consumption. According to the latest figures, trade between the US and Canada is $2.5 billion daily. The automotive sector is one of the largest contributors to this, but the trade also includes everything from minerals, essential for electric vehicle production, to agricultural products. The total economic cost of imposing tariffs on these goods is huge. It has been estimated that a 25% tariff on Canadian goods could reduce Canada's GDP by 2.5%, while the US economy would shrink by 1.6%. That might sound abstract, but what does that really mean for people? Trump's tariff policy isn't new. During his first term, he imposed tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from Canada and Mexico, citing national security and job protection. However, his latest round of tariffs, imposed in his second term, has escalated the situation dramatically. On February 1, 2025, Trump signed executive orders that set a 25% tariff on most imports from Canada and Mexico, with a 10% tariff on Canadian energy products. His stated goal was to address what he called illegal immigration and the flow of fentanyl into the US, while also forcing trading partners to address trade deficits and bring manufacturing back on shore. The immediate consequences of these tariffs are starting to ripple through markets, with tariffs set to impact everything from automobiles to consumer electronics. Prices are expected to rise, and consumer behavior will adjust. Products like textile goods, automotive parts, wood products, and food items will likely become more expensive. This means that everything from the cost of your next car to the price of furniture could see an increase. Everyday items like toilet paper, canned goods, and clothing could see price hikes. Canadian agricultural products are key imports for the US, and rising tariffs could inflate prices at the checkout. For example, certain meats and vegetables could become pricier due to supply chain disruptions caused by the tariff wars. In a swift and unyielding move, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau labeled Trump's tariffs as unjustified and a dumb trade war aimed at destabilizing Canada's economy. Just hours after the US tariffs took effect, Trudeau announced that Canada would retaliate with matching 25% tariffs on $155 billion worth of US goods. The plan is to begin immediately on $30 billion of products, and then expand over the next 21 days if the US tariffs are not withdrawn. This comprehensive retaliation package isn't limited to one sector. It spans consumer goods, food items, textiles, household appliances, and even targets specific politically sensitive products to put pressure on key US states. Tariffs are also expected to heavily impact manufacturers. Goods like construction equipment, furniture, and home appliances are common imports from Canada. These industries rely on seamless cross-border flows of materials and machinery. For instance, a 25% tariff on Canadian machinery imports could result in a rise in production costs for US manufacturers. Canadian businesses, especially those that rely on US components, might struggle to absorb these additional costs, potentially resulting in layoffs or plant shutdowns. One of the most important commodities affected by this trade war is energy. The U.S. imports a significant amount of its energy from Canada, particularly oil and natural gas. Canada is the U.S.'s largest foreign supplier of crude oil, making up about 60% of U.S. crude imports. A 10% tariff on Canadian crude could increase gasoline prices by up to $0.20 to $0.40 per gallon. This could further inflate transportation costs, raising the price of goods and services across the economy. For consumers, it could mean paying more to fill up your car or higher energy bills at home. The economic impact of these tariffs varies region by region. States like Texas, Michigan, and North Dakota are especially vulnerable because they rely heavily on cross-border trade with Canada. For example, North Dakota sends 70% of its exports to Canada, making it the state most exposed to changes in this trade relationship. In contrast, states with less trade dependency, like California or Florida, will feel a less direct effect. While higher prices will hit consumers, the manufacturing sector will also feel the strain. Job losses in industries that rely on cheap imported materials are already being predicted. It's expected that 2.5% of Canadian GDP will be lost in the first year due to these tariffs, resulting in job cuts, reduced working hours, and factory slowdowns. In the U.S., companies that heavily rely on Canadian imports will face similar struggles, especially in sectors like automotive production and agriculture. The U.S.-Canada trade tensions also have significant currency implications. The Canadian dollar could weaken significantly as the trade balance shifts and demand for Canadian exports decreases. This could affect everything from tourism to international investments in Canadian businesses. Moreover, higher tariffs on machinery imports are likely to deter new investments, especially in manufacturing plants that require high-end equipment. The overall slowdown in trade could stunt both business expansion and job growth across both countries. While these tariffs might initially seem like an attempt to protect domestic industries, the broader consequences could be disastrous. Canada's energy, manufacturing, and agriculture sectors will bear the brunt of the economic slowdown. On the other hand, U.S. consumers will face higher prices, which could lead to reduced spending and weaker consumer confidence. Over time, both countries will need to restructure their trade networks and potentially seek alternative suppliers to reduce dependency on each other. But for now, the immediate fallout will hurt both economies and impact everyday lives in ways that will only become clearer as time progresses. As these tariff impacts unfold, consumers can expect higher costs for everything from basic household items to luxury goods. One potential strategy is to buy Canadian-made goods that are still relatively unaffected by the tariffs. Shifting to local suppliers could help reduce the impact of the rising costs of imported products. Additionally, monitoring price trends and adjusting household budgets to accommodate price increases on certain goods will be key. In summary, the U.S.-Canada trade war has far-reaching consequences that affect nearly every sector of the economy. Tariffs on Canadian goods and energy imports will push up prices for consumers and disrupt manufacturing on both sides of the border. The most vulnerable industries will face serious challenges, from automotive parts to energy. While these shifts might create some new economic opportunities, the immediate effects on your daily life will likely involve higher costs and changes in the availability of certain products. Remember, while these changes seem inevitable, it's crucial to stay informed and adapt your spending habits to avoid financial strain. Make sure to like and subscribe for more in-depth analyses of these ongoing economic changes. Let us know in the comments how you think these tariffs will affect you personally and what steps you're taking to prepare.
Canada's expansion into the European market, which is projected to be worth 160 billion euros by 2030. For Canadian consumers, the 0% tariff could significantly boost the availability and affordability of electric vehicles. With the EV market growing by 30% annually in Canada, this could mean more affordable and diverse vehicle options for Canadian families, particularly in cities like Toronto and Vancouver, where EV adoption is increasing at an annual rate of 15%. By 2030, it is expected that 60% of all new car sales in Canada will be electric. For Canadian workers in the EV manufacturing sector, the deal means increased job opportunities. Canada's EV industry could support approximately 250,000 direct and indirect jobs by 2030, contributing an estimated $48 billion annually to the nation's GDP. Chapter 3. The U.S.'s response. Did the U.S. make a mistake? The Biden administration's Buy American policies, including tariffs on steel and automotive imports, were designed to support domestic manufacturers and reduce the U.S.'s $179 billion straight deficit with the EU. However, these policies had unintended consequences for the electric vehicle industry. U.S.-made EVs now face a 15%, 20% price disadvantage in the EU market due to tariffs, whereas Canadian-made EVs enter the market tariff-free. This pricing disparity has hurt American automakers, particularly Tesla, which saw its European market share drop from 12.1% in 2023 to 11% in 2024. In January 2025, Tesla experienced a significant decline in European sales, with vehicle registrations dropping by 45% compared to January 2024, resulting in a reduced market share from 1.8% to 1%, and U.S. companies face greater competition from European manufacturers like Volkswagen and BMW, which have capitalized on the favorable tariffs for EVs produced in the EU. For American consumers, the tariffs have made EVs more expensive. A study by Consumer Reports in 2024 found that the average price of an EV in the U.S. had increased by $2.500 since the tariffs were implemented, translating into higher monthly payments for consumers. Additionally, U.S. companies may struggle to compete with European manufacturers, potentially limiting the variety of EVs available to American buyers. The U.S. trade deficit in electric vehicles may also impact the broader economy. In 2024, the U.S. EV market share in Europe dropped from 12% to 9%, which could result in lost revenue and job growth in the U.S.'s automotive sector. Chapter 4. The global EV market in 2025. A new power dynamic as the EU and U.S. remain at odds over tariffs. China continues to dominate the global EV market. In 2025, China accounts for 55% of global EV production, and Chinese companies like BYD, NIO, and XPeng have aggressively expanded into European markets. In 2024, China exported over 2 million electric vehicles, an 80% increase from 2023. The EU's shift to Canada is partly a response to China's growing dominance. With China's EV market share expected to reach 60% by 2030, the EU's 0% tariff deal with Canada allows it to diversify its supply chain and reduce dependence on Chinese EVs. Canada's role in the global EV market is poised to grow significantly. By 2030, Canadian EV production is projected to reach 300,000 units per year, up from around 50,000 in 2024. Canadian companies are well positioned to supply both the EU and US markets, with 80% of Canadian electric vehicle exports expected to go to Europe by 2030. The Canadian government's $5 billion investment in clean energy and EV infrastructure, coupled with its access to critical minerals, positions the country as a key player in the next phase of the green energy transition. For global consumers, China's dominance in the EV market means lower prices for vehicles, but concerns over battery sourcing and sustainability could affect purchasing decisions. The increasing reliance on Chinese-made batteries could lead to ethical concerns about sourcing materials like cobalt from regions with human rights issues. On the other hand, Canada's rise in the EV market is expected to benefit global consumers by creating more ethical, affordable, and sustainable options. By 2030, the availability of Canadian EVs could lead to a 10%, 15% decrease in EV prices for EU and North American buyers, particularly as Canadian manufacturers ramp up production. The US's failure to secure a 0% tariff deal with the EU and its decision to impose tariffs on EVs have deepened its trade challenges with Europe. The preferential treatment of Canada in the EU market is likely to lead to economic, environmental, and social consequences for the US. The US must adjust its policies and build stronger international trade alliances to remain a key player in the future of the electric vehicle market. In the long term, the US faces the possibility of a slower energy transition and higher costs for consumers, while Canada and other countries stand to gain a competitive edge. The global push for cleaner energy and greener vehicles is inevitable. How the US adapts to this shift will determine its standing on the world stage. For American consumers, workers, and And the economy? The time to reconsider tariffs and trade policies in the electric vehicle sector is now. Will the US act before it is too late? Let us know in the comment below what your thought.